Okay, guys and gals, let's go ahead and highlight the Vietnam War. What you should know. This should be on your flow map for the Vietnam War and possibly on your vocabulary cards that we've made also. So make sure you have this information on those two items, okay? So, Vietnam War. 1954, Vietnam gains independence from France. And of course, you can watch this on the video too. This is just the highlights of what you should have on your flow map and your vocabulary cards for the Vietnam War. Vietnam was divided into two countries, North and South. The North, communist, Ho Chi Minh, the Viet Minh. South, the non-communist, Diem, and the Viet Cong, communist. Remember, the communist Viet Cong were the communists in the South. So, but Diem was a non-communist. The South was non-communist. That's the side we supported. You should have this on your vocab card. Domino theory. Eisenhower coined that term, and if one country becomes communist, neighboring countries would become communist. And in terms of the Vietnam War, if South Vietnam fell to communism, then its neighbors, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, and maybe even India would turn communist. And this is the justification for United States entering the war. You should have the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. This gave the President Johnson power to fight in Vietnam, full unrestricted use of the military without declaration of war. And of course, we talked about how Johnson escalates the war during his presidency. We talked about napalm. Remember that sticky jelly petroleum stuff that was set on fire? Pretty just nasty weapon. Then Agent Orange, that's a vocab card that we covered in the video as well, and we talked about its effects today, birth defects and cancers, and so anyway, that's in the video as well. That's important stuff. Probably the most important thing to remember from the Vietnam War was its turning point in the hearts and the minds of the American people. The Viet Cong attacked South Vietnamese Vietnam cities, around 100 places, I believe, including Saigon. It was the turning point of the war. Americans don't believe the government is telling the truth that the war is almost over in 1968. So that's the turning point in the hearts and minds of the American people when they watched the Tet Offensive on TV. We already studied Roy Benavidez, and we spent a whole day on him. What a great hero, right? Saved lives of 8 men, received the Congressional Medal of Honor, and so he is the Medal of Honor recipient you need to know about for the Vietnam War. Of course, we discussed the anti-war movement. The media allowed Americans to see the war on TV. It creates the credibility gap, which is between what the information that the government's saying and what people are seeing on TV. It's just not matching. Protests increased. Men were burning their draft cards. There were marches, rallies, and demonstrations. And remember, this was going on at the same time as the Civil Rights Movement. So a pretty tough time, especially 1968. Nixon, his presidency is 1969 to 1973. He really got elected in on the idea of Vietnamization, training the southern troops, the South Vietnam troops, Vietnamese troops, to take over the war so American troops can leave. And of course, Nixon escalates the war by invading Cambodia, attempting to cut off the Ho Chi Minh Trail. But nevertheless, this is what he keeps secret, and it gets leaked out, and of course, increasing a lot more protests, including at Kent State, which we learned about. Ping Pong Papers it's official. When these were published, people realized, oh wow, the presidents were saying one thing and we were feeling something else. So it showed that Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson had all lied, Republican and Democrat, about the American progress in the war. And of course, under Gerald Ford, United States pulls out of Vietnam. In 1975, the fall of Saigon occurs. The communists make it all the way to Saigon and take it over. Vietnam is united as one country under a communist government. And what's the legacy of the war? I had mentioned last week the War Powers Act, which limits the power of the president when it comes to utilizing the military. The president has up to 90 days, and I think 30 days of which need to be in the withdrawal process. Otherwise, the president will have to go to Congress and get an official declaration of war. Now remember, in the 26th Amendment it changed the voting age from 21 to 18, and as we were saying in class, the motto was, if I'm old enough to fight and die for my country, I should be old enough to vote for the people who send me into the war. So that's the 26th Amendment. And that's what you need to know for the Vietnam War for high school purposes. Okay? All right. Hope this wraps it up for you. And now we're going to move on to the Nixon lesson.